my name's Adam. I'm going to be a student physiotherapist for today. I'm just going to talk through some of the exercises that you have been prescribed. So just to start off, I see you've completed your Part Q and that you aren't really contraindicated for any of the exercises on here. You've also signed a consent form to understand there is some small amount of risk involved with any exercise, of course. So just to start off, we're going to start off with a little bit of a warm-up. For this, we're sort of looking at a working rate of around a 7 out of 10 on an RPE, of a 5 to 7, 5 to 6 on an RPE scale. This is sort of a scale between 1 being you're sitting down in your chair doing nothing, and 3 being you physically can't be any more exhausted. So this is normally you're sort of getting a little bit of breath as you can hold a conversation, but maybe you can't have multiple long sentences after another. So just to start off, the first exercise to do is toes to the sky. So you might struggle to do this on the ground at first, so you just start off with your foot raised like this. Try and bring up your toes like that, and back down, and back up. As you get better, I understand you will be able to increase your range of motion and potentially be able to do it from the floor as well, so you'll move on to doing it like this as so. If at first you could only do a very small movement, like that, so that's absolutely fine. You can work on increasing the range of movement overall. Moving on to that, we're moving on to just seated knee extensions. So just going to be seated here, straighten your knee, and back down. Again, with all things, first thing is probably with you is probably going to be to improve your range of motion. So you might only be getting to here. As time goes on, hopefully we can get you up there. After that, you can worry about increasing the number of reps and sets. Then we're moving on to elevated eversions of the foot. So as you can see here, just sort of bringing your foot out to the side. You should be working the muscles down the side of your leg here. Again, once you become more experienced, you'll be able to do this against gravity, as so. And one last one, two of this muscular section, toe point. So just from this position, point your toe and back. Again, as your muscles develop and get more to your working capacity, you'll be able to start to move on to heel raises. After that, I understand that we're doing a short cardiovascular section of 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, sorry, for the warm-up. For this, of course, I'm prescribing you a walk, but you can do other forms of cardiovascular exercise as long as it don't impact, such as cycling or swimming. I don't know what kind of facilities you have access to, and so if you would prefer to do either of those, by all means, but if you can't do that, I recommend some walking. You probably want to be assisted at first, so I'm using a walking stick as an example. Just keep walking along, 5 minutes, try and keep up a working pace of around 6 to 7 on the RPE scale, as I before mentioned. If you want to increase the challenge, if you find walking the flats too easy, of course you can walk up a hill or try and walk for slightly longer. But this is only a warm-up, so you're only really aiming for about 5 to 7 on an REP scale. So next we're moving on to the working sets. For this, obviously it's a bit harder where it's shorter reps, so we're normally looking at about 12 reps per set now. And we're about 7 to 8 in the RPE scale, which means you're starting to become quite breathless. You can maybe manage short 1 or 2 words, but you couldn't put together a sentence, for example, at this kind of rep range. So the first thing we're going to move on to is sit to stand. You're probably having to use your hands at first for support, and then slowly push up onto your feet and back down. If you can't go all the way at first, no worries. If it's only like that or like that, no concerns at all. We just slowly work, and hopefully over a number of weeks, you'll be able to see an improvement there, increasing your range of motion. Obviously, eventually, we will start to think about, in maybe future sessions, we might start to think about increasing the number of sets, or maybe even adding a weight to this. But for now, only worry about trying to get off the seat. If you're finding this too easy, of course, by all means, try it without your hands. The next thing we're moving on to is a step up. Again, to my understanding is you probably have a step in your house or near your house, but if you don't, of course, we can get in contact with us and we can provide one of these. So again, just holding on to some support, using this walking stick as an example. Of course, you could be holding onto a railing, but just sort of try and step up onto it and increase the range of motion. To start off with, feel free to use your hands for support, or even push off with your leg on the floor, just to try and get up there. As we move on, we will want to be slowly moving you on to just stepping up with the leg by itself. But take your time with that. There's no hurry. The next thing we're moving on to is leg extensions, similar to the warm-up, of course. Just like that. I will provide you with some resistance bands if you're finding that too easy, that you can just put around both legs and try and extend it. But again, it's probably more for later stages that will come into play. And the second last stage of the weighted section is deadlifts, or stiff leg deadlifts. A lot of people think deadlifts are for big muscly guys in the gym. That's not necessarily true. So just a very lightweight for an example. Hold on for support. Just flex at the hip. I'm not wanting you to flex slightly, bend your knees slightly and bend your hips slightly, and just sort of lower yourself down. As so, be very careful to keep a straight back as you do this. You should feel a bit of a stretch and some muscles as you engage in muscles on the back of your thigh there. But again, just be very careful with it. Take your time. If you can only manage a very small movement at first, that's absolutely fine. That's to be expected. Again, as we move on, we can slowly start to increase your range of motion and potentially add heavier weights. Again, just moving on to weighted plantar flexion. So again, you might want to have support with you just as you start off, but you're starting off on both legs and just trying to go up onto your toes and back down. You might start off only being able to get up onto your toes a little way, and even if you find it too hard with the support, you could even just be on the seat trying to do it that way, and maybe add some bags of sugar or something on your knees if you were really struggling to do it on your feet. But ideally would have you up onto the feet. Just start off with probably heel taps rather than going onto your toes, and then slowly try to increase the amount of muscles you're using there. And eventually, if you get really comfortable with that, you might be able to get onto a step and start lifting yourself up as so. But that's probably quite advanced and will happen in a couple more weeks. There's also just inversions, this time against gravity. So as you see here, just lifting the side of your toe up and down. If you feel it down the side of your legs, again, if this gets too easy, you can come back to us in a couple of weeks and we'll give you a resistance band to try and help it. But just for the meantime, you could do that. If you find it's too easy doing that, I'm sure you could even just push down against it on your hand for now. And of course, there is a 10-minute cardio section, same as before. I've given you walking in any sort of flat, safe place. Again, if you're finding it too easy on the flat, of course you can add up a hill. You could make your walk go through the route of a hill, for example. But that's probably going to be a bit more in later stages of this workout. Of course, again, same applies as before. If you would prefer to go cycling or swimming or any other no or very low impact cardiovascular exercises, by all means, if you prefer to do it, off you go. And finally, onto a cool down. So for this, you're sort of slowing down your walk or whatever cardiovascular workout you've done from probably 7 or an 8 out of 10 on the RPE scale, where you're struggling to put together a sentence, to probably a 5, and then probably a 5 or 6, and then slow it down to a 4. So you're just sort of going from maybe a bit of a brisk walk to a little bit of a doddle, and then you can have a rest after your stretches. So after you've done the cardio section of your cool down, we're moving on to just a wee hamstring stretch. So just place your foot forward like so. Try to place your weight on the bent leg and just put your weight on it as so. You should feel a nice stretch, maybe a little bit of mild discomfort down the back of the leg there, but nothing serious. Hold for 20 to 30 seconds or so, and the other leg. Obviously, as you get more advanced, I expect it to be more and more pronounced, the angle you're doing it. After that, just to be active, what we call hot quad stretch, which is the muscles on the front of your thigh. So just standing on one leg or holding onto something for support, just bend your hamstring, your leg like that. I don't, just be very careful with this one not to flex it too much, as your stitches have just been removed. The guidelines don't recommend you stretch a joint that has recently a stitch removed that much for several weeks after removal, because there's still some stitches in there which could come up apart. So probably don't do any more than say 90 degrees, and maybe hold it like that just to allow the blood flow to return. With your other leg, of course, no worries, you can stretch it as much as you can, absolutely fine. After that, just going to go on to a calf stretch, the muscles down the back of your lower leg here. So just 1 foot forward, you might again need to hold on to something for support. Sink your heel to the floor and sink into it. You should feel a nice mild discomfort down the back of your lower leg. Hold for another 30 seconds or so, switch legs. Once you've done that, you just do some toe points. And finally finish off with stretches of the muscles on the outside of your lower thigh. So just bring your foot inwards. You feel a nice mild discomfort down there. Switch sides. Again, you should be holding for about 30 seconds in this one.